It is 7:43 in the morning. Ryu Jaehan is already late for a call with his legal team in Singapore. He has been awake since 4 a.m. He has not eaten. He has not slept more than 3 hours in 4 days, because the acquisition he's been building for 8 months is collapsing under the weight of 3 simultaneous challenges, and he is the only person in his organization who can hold it together. He is walking fast down the east corridor of his Seoul estate, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, when he passes the open door to the small dining room. He does not mean to look in. He looks in, and he stops. His daughter, 6 years old, Seo-yeon, who has not eaten a full meal in 4 months, who has refused breakfast every morning since her mother died, who has had 3 different nutritionists, 2 occupational therapists, and 1 specialist flown in from London, all of whom she has screamed at, hidden from, or simply turned her face away from, is sitting at the small table. She is eating, not being coaxed, not being threatened or bribed or managed, eating. A spoonful of soft rice porridge, carefully lifted, held in front of her mouth, and Seo-yeon is leaning forward with the specific concentration of a child who wants the next bite before the current one is finished. The woman holding the spoon is the new maid, the one who arrived 6 days ago, the one Jaehan has spoken to exactly once in the corridor when he asked her name and she said Chiamaka, and he nodded and kept walking because he had 4 calls before noon and no time for introductions. He watches from the doorway. Chiamaka says something, very quietly. He can't hear the words, only the tone, low, unhurried, the particular quality of a voice that has learned to be calm in rooms where calm is rare. Seo-yeon tilts her head. Then she opens her mouth. Another spoonful. Jaehan's phone buzzes in his hand. Singapore. The call he has been building toward for 3 days. He doesn't answer it. He stands in the doorway of the small dining room and watches his daughter eat breakfast for the first time in 4 months, and something in his chest, something he sealed shut the morning his wife's body was carried out of this house, cracks open just enough to let the light in. He doesn't go in. He doesn't announce himself. He stands there until Seo-yeon finishes the bowl, and then he walks away, slowly, toward his study. And when he sits down at his desk, he realizes his coffee has gone cold, and he doesn't care at all. To understand what is happening in that dining room, what Chiamaka Obi is doing that 4 months of specialists could not, we need to go back 6 days, to the morning she arrived. The Ryu estate in Hanam-dong is the kind of property that doesn't advertise itself. No gate with a name, no architectural statement, just a wall, a narrow driveway, and a gate that opens if the face in the camera matches the list, which Chiamaka's does because she has been vetted by the agency for 3 weeks and background checked by someone whose methods she suspects go considerably beyond standard procedure. She is 28 years old, Nigerian. She came to Seoul 7 years ago on a scholarship that became a master's degree, that became a research position, that became a funding cut, that became, after 18 months of pivoting, a domestic placement license, and 3 years of work that she has been good at because she is good at most things she decides to be good at. She has been briefed by the agency. The estate has a full household staff. Her specific assignment is care for the 6-year-old daughter, Ryu Jaehan, who has been assessed as experiencing complicated grief following the death of her mother 8 months ago. She has selective eating. She has periods of non-communication. She has night terrors. She has had 3 different nutritionists, 2 occupational therapists, and 1 specialist flown in from London, all of whom she has screamed at, hidden from, or simply turned her face away from, is sitting at the small table. She is eating, not being coaxed, not being threatened or bribed or managed, eating. A spoonful of soft rice porridge, carefully lifted, held in front of her mouth, and Seo-yeon is leaning forward with the specific concentration of a child who wants the next bite before the current one is finished. The woman holding the spoon is the new maid, the one who arrived 6 days ago, the one Jaehan has spoken to exactly once in the corridor when he asked her name and she said Chiamaka, and he nodded and kept walking because he had 4 calls before noon and no time for introductions. She is 28 years old, Nigerian. She came to Seoul 7 years ago on a scholarship that became a master's degree, that became a research position, that became a funding cut, that became, after 18 months of pivoting, a domestic placement license, and 3 years of work that she has been good at because she is good at most things she decides to be good at. The agency coordinator, choosing her words carefully over a video call, said, "The father is very focused on finding the right solution for her. He's tried everything. The position is open-ended. It's not a fixed contract. It's open as long as it's working." What she had not said, but what was implicit in the careful phrasing, it has not been working. Nothing has been working. And Chiamaka is effectively the last resort before the father considers moving the child to a residential therapeutic facility. Chiamaka had said, "I understand." And she had, in the specific way that people understand things when they have lived a version of them. The head housekeeper is a woman named Mrs. Kim, 55, efficient in the way of someone who has been running complex households for 30 years and has no patience for complication. She meets Chiamaka at the service entrance at 8 a.m. "You're from the agency?" "Yes, Chiamaka Obi." "You've read the briefing file?" "Yes." Then you know she won't eat. She won't talk to strangers. She won't allow physical contact from adults she doesn't know. She sleeps in her father's room most nights because she screams in her own. Mrs. Kim's voice is not unkind. It is the voice of someone delivering a situation report. The last caregiver lasted 11 days. The one before, 6. The one before that didn't make it past the first afternoon. "I know." "You're confident." "I'm not confident. I just know that the approaches that haven't worked probably have something in common, and I'd like to try something different." Mrs. Kim studies her. "What's different about your approach?" "I'm not going to approach her." A pause. "I'm sorry?" "I'm not going to approach her at all. Not for the first few days. I'm going to exist in the same spaces she uses and let her come to me if she wants." Mrs. Kim absorbs this. "And if she doesn't? Then I'll know something. But I think she will." Mrs. Kim does not look convinced, but she has been in this house for 4 months watching specialists fail, and she has out of strong opinions on the subject. "Your room is on the east wing, second door. You'll be responsible for the morning routine, meals, and afternoon supervision. The night routine is handled by the night staff, unless she specifically requests you." "Understood." "One more thing." Mrs. Kim pauses. "Mr. Ryu, he works, constantly. He is not absent, he cares very much about the child, but he is in his study or in meetings most of the day. He will ask you for progress reports. He wants information, not reassurance. Don't tell him things are fine when they aren't." "I won't." "Good." Mrs. Kim nods. "Your uniform is in the room. Breakfast is at 7. Chiamaka does not go to Seo-yeon's room. She learns where the child is, in the small sitting room adjacent to the main hall, according to one of the other staff, and then she goes to the kitchen and asks the chef for a piece of plain toast and a cup of warm barley tea, which she takes to the small sitting room's adjoining corridor. She sits on the floor in the corridor, back against a wall, and she reads her own book, from her bag, a novel she has been meaning to finish for 3 weeks. She can hear, from inside the sitting room, the low sounds of a children's television program. She does not go in. She sits in the corridor, reads her book, and does not try to make herself known. After 40 minutes, the sitting room door opens. Seo-yeon stands in the doorway. She is small for 6, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a way that suggests Mrs. Kim does it because nobody else does. She is wearing a sweater that is slightly too big. Her mother's, Chiamaka will learn later. And she is looking at Chiamaka the way children look at things they're not sure are real. Chiamaka does not look up from her book. 10 seconds. 20. She turns a page. The door closes. Chiamaka keeps reading. She does the same thing on day 2. Corridor, floor, book. Toast and tea beside her. Not offered, just there. On day 2, the door opens after 25 minutes instead of 40. Seo-yeon stands in the doorway for longer this time, long enough that Chiamaka finishes a full page without turning it. Then the door closes again. On day 3, she changes something small. She hums. Nothing specific, a melody she learned from her grandmother in Enugu, low and unhurried, the kind of sound that doesn't demand anything from the person who hears it. On day 3, the door opens after 15 minutes, and Seo-yeon does not go back inside. She sits down in the doorway, not in the corridor, not crossing the threshold, but exactly in the frame of it, half in and half out, and watches Chiamaka read. Chiamaka keeps humming, very quietly. She turns another page. After 12 minutes, without looking up, she says, "There's toast if you want some." Seo-yeon doesn't answer. Chiamaka doesn't push. 5 minutes later, the child reaches across the threshold and takes a piece of toast. She eats it in the doorway, one small bite at a time, and when it's gone, she goes back inside and closes the door. That evening, Chiamaka writes in the small notebook she keeps for work notes. Day 3. She ate toast. Proximity, not approach. She needs to choose. Chiamaka meets the father on day 4, properly, in the kitchen at 6 a.m. He is already there when she comes in, standing at the counter, coffee in hand, reading something on his phone. He is taller than she expected from the staff's descriptions. Dark circles that match his daughter's. The particular tiredness of someone who is exhausted and has made peace with being exhausted because the alternative is worse. He looks up when she comes in. His expression doesn't change. She is staff. She is expected. But his eyes are sharp. He is a man who notices things. She recognizes the quality because she has it herself. "You're the new one," he says in Korean. "Yes, Chiamaka Obi," in Korean. Something flickers, the slight recalibration of a man who expected to have to shift languages. "Mrs. Kim said you wanted to try a different approach." "Yes." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm not going to try to help Seo-yeon. I'm going to spend time near her and see if she wants help." He looks at her for a moment. That sounds like not doing anything. It looks like not doing anything. It isn't. He sets his coffee down. The look he gives her is the look of a man who has heard a great many reassurances in 4 months and has stopped finding them useful. She ate half a bowl of porridge in the last 3 days. That's the most she's eaten in a single day since August. "I know, Mrs. Kim told me." "What changed?" I considered how to say this. Nothing changed. That's the point. I didn't change anything about her environment. I just added something that didn't require anything from her. He is quiet for a moment. A presence. Yes. He picks up his coffee. He looks at it. "She used to eat everything," he says, and his voice drops half a register on the last word in the way that means the sentence was supposed to stop earlier and didn't. "Before. She had the appetite of someone twice her size. Her mother used to say," she stops. Chiamaka waits. He doesn't finish the sentence. He just nods once, the nod of a man who has remembered he is talking to a member of his staff at 6 a.m. and has said more than he intended. "Keep doing whatever you're doing, and report to Mrs. Kim daily." "Of course." He picks up his phone and walks out. Chiamaka pours herself coffee and thinks about the way his voice dropped on the word before. Day 6, 7:43 a.m. Chiamaka is in the small dining room not because she was told to be there, but because she has been adjusting her positioning slightly each day. Corridor to doorway to just inside the room, following the geography of Seo-yeon's comfort. This morning, she is sitting at the small table with her own breakfast, eating quietly, when Seo-yeon comes in. The child stops when she sees her. Chiamaka looks up, smiles once, looks back down at her own bowl. Seo-yeon doesn't leave. She stands near the door for a full minute. Then she moves, slowly, to the chair at the other end of the table and sits down. She doesn't ask for food. She doesn't say anything. She just sits. The chef appears in the kitchen doorway. Chiamaka meets his eyes and gives the smallest shake of her head. "Don't come in yet." She finishes her own bowl. Then she stands, goes to the kitchen, and comes back with 2 small bowls of soft rice porridge. One placed in front of herself, one placed, without ceremony, in front of Seo-yeon. She sits back down. She picks up her own spoon. She doesn't look at the child. She doesn't say eat or try or any of the words that have been said to this child 40 times a day for 4 months. She just eats her own porridge and hums the melody from the corridor. 30 seconds. A minute. Then the sound of a spoon against ceramic, small and tentative. Chiamaka doesn't look up. Another spoonful. Another. The particular rhythm of a child eating with concentration, each bite deliberate, each one its own small decision. She finishes the bowl. This is the moment Jaehan passes the doorway. This is the moment he stops. He doesn't come in. She hears his footsteps slow and then stop outside the door. She knows he is there. She doesn't acknowledge it, doesn't change anything, doesn't look up. Seo-yeon finishes the bowl. She sets her spoon down with a small, precise click. She looks at Chiamaka. Chiamaka looks back. She smiles again. Not the enormous, encouraging smile of someone trying to reward a behavior, just a quiet smile of someone who is glad for company at breakfast. Seo-yeon almost smiles back. She doesn't quite, but the muscles around her eyes shift, and that is close enough. Then she slides off her chair, picks up the stuffed rabbit she carries everywhere, and walks out of the dining room. The footsteps in the corridor resume, moving away quickly. Chiamaka sits in the small dining room with 2 empty bowls and a morning that feels like it has changed something. The breakthrough with food opens a channel. Not to speech, not yet, but to proximity. Seo-yeon begins appearing near Chiamaka with the reliability of a shadow. If Chiamaka is in the garden, Seo-yeon is at the garden door. If Chiamaka is folding linens in the laundry room, Seo-yeon is in the doorway with her rabbit. She doesn't ask for anything. She doesn't say anything. She just occupies the same space, watching with those dark, too old eyes, and Chiamaka lets her. She learns the child's language without being taught it. The way Seo-yeon holds her rabbit when she's anxious, by the ears, tight. The way she presses herself against walls when the household is loud with staff or guests. The way she tilts her head when she's heard something that doesn't make sense to her and is deciding whether it's worth the energy to address. She has her mother's mouth, according to the photographs Chiamaka has seen on the walls of the main corridor. There are 7 of them, all of the same woman, elegant and laughing and very alive. She has her father's eyes, the same sharpness, the same quality of watching. On day 9, for the first time, Seo-yeon speaks. Not words. A sound, a low questioning sound, directed at the rabbit as Chiamaka braids the child's hair in the sitting room. The kind of sound that children make in conversation with toys when they are not yet ready to address the human. Chiamaka responds to it as though it were directed at her. I know, she says in Igbo, her own language. I thought it would take longer too. Seo-yeon goes still. That's Igbo, she says in Korean, switching seamlessly. It's the language from where I grew up. My grandmother used to speak it to me when she was talking to herself. Seo-yeon looks at her in the mirror. Your rabbit looks patient, Chiamaka says, returning to the braiding. Patient animals are good to have around. Seo-yeon looks at the rabbit, then back up at Chiamaka in the mirror. Solmi, she says. The voice is very small and slightly hoarse for disuse. The name of the rabbit. It is the first word Chiamaka has heard her speak. Solmi, Chiamaka repeats, as though it is entirely unremarkable that the child just said her first word in weeks. That's a beautiful name. Seo-yeon looks at Solmi, then back at the mirror. She's been with me for 3 years, Seo-yeon says, in a rush, like the words have been waiting and she's decided to let them go all at once. Mama gave her to me when I was scared. She said Solmi was brave, and if I held her, I could borrow some. Chiamaka keeps braiding. Her hands don't falter. Her expression doesn't do anything that might frighten the words back inside. Does it work? She asks. Seo-yeon thinks about this seriously. Sometimes, not always. That's how it is with borrowed brave. You have to keep giving it back and borrowing it again. Seo-yeon looks at Solmi for a long time. Where do I give it back to? She asks.
Let us know in the comments where in the world you are watching this video from. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and stay with us. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next video.
You just hold her, Chiamaka says, and you say thank you. And then the brave is available again next time. Seo-yeon presses the rabbit to her chest. Thank you, Solmi, she says, very quietly. Chiamaka finishes the braid. She ties it off with a small blue ribbon she has learned Seo-yeon likes. In the mirror, the child's face is still serious, still carrying everything it has been carrying for 4 months. But something in it has loosened, the very top layer of the wall, the thinnest and most superficial one. It is a beginning. He has been watching since the dining room. Not intrusively, He is not the kind of man who hovers. But he has begun calibrating his own movements around the patterns of his daughter's day in a way he was not doing before, because for the first time in 4 months, his daughter's day has patterns worth calibrating around. He notices that Seo-yeon eats breakfast every morning now, full bowls. He notices that she no longer screams at 2 a.m. with the specific frequency of the night terrors. He notices that she has started coming to the main corridor in the afternoons, which she had not done since August because the photographs of her mother are there and she couldn't look at them. She still can't look at them for long, but she walks past them now. He doesn't know what Chiamaka is doing specifically. He knows what it looks like from the outside, a young woman going about her work, present but non-demanding, existing in the household with a quietness that is different from the quietness of deference. It is the quietness of someone who is genuinely at ease. He finds this difficult to explain to the Singapore legal team when they ask why he missed the Tuesday call. He finds it difficult to explain to himself. On day 12, he goes to Mrs. Kim. "What is she doing?" he asks. Not a complaint, a genuine question. "She's not doing anything, sir," Mrs. Kim says. "That's the thing. She's present. She reads in the corridor. She hums when she's working. She doesn't try to manage Seo-yeon. She just exists near her." A pause. "It's the strangest thing I've ever seen work." He thinks about this. Has she said anything about Seo-yeon? "She gives me daily reports. She's very observant. She noticed that Seo-yeon calms down faster after loud sounds if she can feel a solid surface behind her. She moved her usual sitting spot in the garden to the wall side. She noticed that she eats better if the food is plain colors, no sauces, nothing mixed together. She's been adjusting the kitchen requests accordingly." He looks at the daily reports Mrs. Kim hands him. They are not reassurances. They are precise, clinical, detailed. Day 9, first verbal communication. Subject used single word to name stuffed animal, followed by approximately 40 words in Korean. Context, hair braiding. Recommend continuing physical care routines as conversation settings. He has a medical background, he asks. The agency file says she has a master's in developmental psychology, Mrs. Kim says. She didn't mention it. He reads the report again. Then he puts it down and goes back to his study, where 3 separate legal matters are waiting, and Singapore has rescheduled the call for Thursday. He sits at his desk. He does not immediately pick up the phone. He thinks instead about the way his daughter looked in the dining room doorway, small, cautious, exactly herself, and how Chiamaka had not moved toward her, had not adjusted, had not done any of the things that make adults seem like they want something from you. He picks up the phone. He puts it back down. He goes to the kitchen, which he almost never does, and makes himself a cup of tea, and stands at the window that looks onto the garden, where Seo-yeon is currently sitting beside Chiamaka on the bench by the south wall, not talking, but close. The closest she has been to another person's body since her mother died. He drinks his tea. He goes back to work. She has not told anyone in this household the specific reason she is good at this. She is good at it because she knows what it is to be a child who cannot eat. Not grief. Her version was different. She was 9 years old in Enugu, and her mother was sick for a long time before she died. And during that time, Chiamaka had developed a specific relationship with food that traumatized children sometimes developed. It felt wrong to eat when her mother couldn't. It felt wrong to want things, to be hungry, to be alive in the ways that living required. Her grandmother, her father's mother, who had lived with them, had not treated this as a problem to be solved. She had not said, "You must eat," or "You're worrying me," or "Think about how your mother would feel." She had simply eaten her own meals, slowly, at the same table, and hummed, and occasionally placed something within reach and let it be there. She had waited. Chiamaka had come back to food in her own time, in her own way, because her grandmother had understood that the child was not refusing food. She was refusing to be alone in her grief, and nobody had noticed. She has not told Jaehan this because it is not information he needs to do his job. She has told Seo-yeon nothing of it because the child needs someone to be present for her own history. But it is there, underneath everything, the specific knowledge that comes from having been the child in the chair. Day 15, 2:17 a.m. She hears it before she is fully awake, the specific sound of a child moving through a house at night, the careful, deliberate steps of someone trying not to be heard, which paradoxically sound louder than normal walking. Chiamaka sits up in her room on the east wing. She listens. The footsteps stop outside her door. She waits. She does not open the door. She does not call out. 1 minute. 2. She gets up, very quietly, and sits on the floor near the door. She doesn't open it. From the other side, a soft sound, not quite crying, the pre-crying sound, the controlled breathing of someone who is fighting it. Chiamaka begins to hum, very quietly, the melody from Enugu. The sound from the other side of the door changes. The controlled breathing slows. She hums for 8 minutes. On the 9th minute, she hears the child slide down the door, the soft friction of a small body settling against wood. And then the breathing changes again, slower, the specific change of a child falling asleep against the door in a corridor. Chiamaka sits on her side of the door, back against it, for another 20 minutes until she is sure the sleep is real. Then she opens the door very gently, lifts Seo-yeon, who is small enough to carry easily, and brings her inside. She settles her on the bed, pulls the blanket over her, puts Sol-mi under her arm. She sits in the chair in the corner. She does not sleep again that night. She sits and watches the child sleep and thinks about her grandmother sitting at the end of her own bed, a long time ago, not sleeping either. In the morning, Seo-yeon wakes up and looks at her across the room with an expression that is not surprise. It is the expression of someone who expected to be found. "You hummed," she says. "I did." "You knew I was there." "Yes." Seo-yeon looks at Sol-mi. "How?" "I heard you walking. You walk very quietly, but I grew up in a house with a lot of cousins. I learned to hear quiet walking." Seo-yeon thinks about this. "Did your cousins also come to your door at night?" "Sometimes, when they were scared." "What did you do?" "Hummed," Chiamaka says. "It's what my grandmother did for me." Sol-mi presses against her chin. "Was your grandmother nice?" "She was very direct and she always told the truth and she made you eat things even when you didn't want to, but yes, she was nice." Seo-yeon almost smiles. "That sounds like Halmyoni, my dad's mother. She lives in Busan." "Do you miss her?" "Yes." A pause. "I miss everyone who's in a different place." Chiamaka looks at her steadily. "I know," she says. "That's a reasonable thing to miss." Seo-yeon looks at her for a moment. "You won't tell my dad I came here." "I'll tell Mrs. Kim so she knows where you were, but I won't tell your dad unless you want me to." "He has a lot of things to worry about," Seo-yeon says, with the particular gravity of a child who has overheard adult conversations and understood more than anyone intended. "He does," Chiamaka agrees, "but he worries about you most." Seo-yeon looks at the window. "I know," she says, quietly. "That's why I try not to give him more things." Chiamaka looks at this 6-year-old child who is trying to protect her father from her own grief and feels something tight and aching in her chest. "Seo-yeon," she says carefully, "you're allowed to need things. You're not a burden. You're his daughter." Seo-yeon is quiet for a long time. "He cried once," she says finally. "After Mama. I wasn't supposed to see, but I did. I was on the stairs and he was in the kitchen and he cried very quietly so I wouldn't hear." Chiamaka waits. "I think he's trying to be brave for me, like Sol-mi. And you're trying to be brave for him." "Yes." "What if," Chiamaka says, "you both just stopped trying for a little while? What if you just both got to be sad at the same time, in the same room?" Seo-yeon thinks about this for a long time. It is not a question she rejects. She considers it with the serious architecture of a child who takes ideas seriously. He might not want to. He might not know how, Chiamaka says. That's different. Day 18. He hears the humming. He has come back late, past midnight, which is not unusual, which has become so much a standard that Mrs. Kim leaves food covered on the counter without being asked. And he is walking toward his room when he passes the east wing and hears it. Low, melodic, unhurried. He stops. He recognizes it. He has heard it from the garden, from the corridor, from the small sounds that filter through the household at odd hours. Chiamaka's hum. The melody she uses when she is working and when she is not working. The same melody, the same unhurried pace. It is coming from behind the closed door of her room. He should keep walking. It is midnight and he has 6 a.m. calls, and the melody is not his business. He stands in the corridor and listens. From inside the room, very faintly, a child's breathing, the specific rhythm of someone deeply asleep. He presses one hand against the wall. His daughter is in the maid's room, sleeping, because the maid hummed and his daughter came to the sound the way you come to warmth when you have been cold for a long time. He stands in the corridor for a while. Then he goes to his own room, which is larger and colder and full of the specific silence of a space that used to hold 2 people and now holds 1. And he sits on the edge of the bed and he thinks about borrowed brave and warm sounds in the dark and a child who is trying to protect him from her grief. He thinks about this for a long time. Day 20, 6:15 a.m. Kitchen. He is there again when she comes in. This has become a pattern, not deliberate on either side, just the rhythm of 2 people who both wake up early in the same house. "She's been sleeping in your room," he says. It is not an accusation. His voice is flat with the particular flatness of someone who is deciding how to feel about something. "Not every night, 3 times so far." "Is that—" He stops. "Is that part of the approach?" "No, she comes to me. I don't invite her." He looks at his coffee. "She doesn't come to me."
Let us know in the comments where in the world you are watching this video from. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and stay with us. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next video.
Chiamaka considers this carefully. She does not say she's afraid of hurting you or she's trying to protect you, information that is Seo-yeon's to share, not hers to deliver. But she can give him the edge of it. "She knows you're tired," she says. "She's trying to take up less space in your worry." Something crosses his face. Not quite pain, something past pain, on the other side of it. "She's 6, he says. "She's 6, and she's very intelligent, and she loves you," Chiamaka says. "She sees more than you know." "I've tried to—" He stops again. He has the habit of stopping sentences in the middle, she's noticed. Not because she doesn't know how to finish them, because finishing them costs something. "I sit with her every night. I read to her. I've taken her to every specialist who is recommended. I'm trying. I know you are." "She won't eat for me." His voice is very controlled. "I have tried everything I know how to try, and she won't eat for me." This is the closest he has come to saying the thing that is underneath everything in the 18 days she has been here. She does not mistake it for a request. It is not a request. It is a fact laid on the kitchen counter at 6:15 in the morning by a man who does not know what to do with it. "She's not refusing you," Chiamaka says. "She's refusing the weight of you needing her to be okay. There's a difference." He looks at her. "When you sit with her and you're hoping she'll eat, she feels the hope. It's pressure, even when you're not applying it. She loves you too much to disappoint you, so she can't start." A pause. "I don't need anything from her. That's the only thing that's different about me." He is quiet for a long time. "So how do I—" "Stop needing her to be okay," Chiamaka says gently. "Just be with her. Not to check if she's eating or talking or healing, just because she's your daughter and you want to be near her." He looks out the kitchen window. "I don't know if I can do that," he says, very quietly. "I look at her and I see her mother and I see everything I failed to—" He stops. Jaw tightens. "I don't know if I can look at her without the weight." "Then start small. 5 minutes. Just existing in the same room with no agenda. She'll feel it." He looks at her. It's a longer look than usual, the look of a man assessing something and finding it different from what he expected. "You have a psychology background." "I do." "Why are you working as a maid?" "I'm working with your daughter. The uniform is incidental." He almost smiles. It doesn't quite arrive, but it is the closest she has seen to one. 5 minutes, he says. 5 minutes. He tries it on day 23. Chiamaka is in the garden with Seo-yeon. They are making something with leaves and small stones, a project that has been ongoing for 3 days without ever quite resolving into a specific thing, which seems to be the point. When Jaehan comes through the garden door, he has no phone, he's not in his work clothes. He sits down on the low bench near the door and does nothing except exist in the garden. Seo-yeon sees him immediately, her hands still on the leaves. He doesn't say anything, he doesn't open his arms or suggest she come to him. He just sits there, and Chiamaka keeps working with the stones, and the afternoon light is very quiet, and the garden smells of cold earth and the last of the winter herbs. 3 minutes. 4. Seo-yeon picks up a small red leaf. She crosses the garden, slowly, holding the leaf in both hands with the same care she gives Sol-mi. She stands in front of her father. He looks at her, not with hope, not with want, just with the specific quality of a man who has learned in the last 3 days to look at his daughter without needing her to be anything except what she is. She holds out the leaf. He takes it, he looks at it, he says, "It's a very good leaf. We're making something. We don't know what yet. That's the best kind of making," he says. She looks at him for a moment. Then she goes back to the project. But she goes back to it sitting closer to where he is, and after another 3 minutes, without appearing to plan it, she leans slightly, just slightly, against his leg. He doesn't move. He doesn't put his arm around her or make anything of it. He just sits very still, like someone receiving something precious that he's afraid to disturb. Chiamaka keeps arranging stones and does not look up and thinks about her grandmother and borrowed brave and how the smallest things are always the whole thing. Day 26, Sunday. The household is quieter than weekdays. Jaehan has asked Chiamaka in the kitchen at 6 a.m. whether she thinks Seo-yeon might eat with him. Not whether she will, not how to make it happen, whether she thinks it's possible. Chiamaka had said, "I think it's possible, but sit at the table and eat your own breakfast first. Don't wait for her." He does. He's at the small dining table with his own food when Seo-yeon comes in. She stops when she sees him, not afraid, just recalibrating. She looks at Chiamaka, who's at the kitchen counter with her back turned, making tea. Chiamaka does not turn around. Seo-yeon comes to the table. She sits down. She looks at her father's food. He's eating rice and egg, the simple Sunday breakfast. She looks at the empty place at the table. Jaehan does not offer her food. He eats his breakfast. Seo-yeon looks at Chiamaka's back. "Can I have some?" she asks. Her voice is still small, still slightly hoarse, but it is directed for the first time, not at Chiamaka, but at the room in general, at the possibility of the room. Jaehan looks up. His expression does not do anything that could be mistaken for relief or hope. He says simply, "Of course." He gets up and serves her himself. Rice, egg, simple, plain, exactly what she can eat, and sets it in front of her and sits back down. She eats. He watches her for exactly 1 second and then looks back at his own food. In the kitchen doorway, Chiamaka presses her mug against her chest and watches a father and his daughter eat Sunday breakfast together and looks at the ceiling for a moment because she needs somewhere to put the feeling. Day 28, 6 a.m., kitchen. He comes in and she is already there, and he stands at the counter and does not immediately reach for the coffee, which is unusual. She waits. "I need to tell you something," he says. "All right." "I watched you that first morning when she ate the porridge." He does not look at her. He looks at his hands on the counter. "I was going to a call. I was already late. I heard something and I looked in and she was..." He stops. "She was leaning forward for the next bite." Chiamaka is quiet. "I haven't seen her do that since her mother was alive. She used to lean forward like that for everything, excited about the next thing before the current thing was finished." His jaw moves. "I stood in that doorway for 11 minutes. I timed it afterward. I missed a call." "I know," she says. "I heard your footsteps stop." He looks at her. "You knew I was there." "Yes." "Why didn't you do anything differently?" "Because you needed to see it happen without anyone managing it for you," she says. "You've been managing everything for 4 months. You needed to see something happen on its own." He is quiet for a moment. "Who are you?" he says, not unkindly, with genuine wonder, which from him is the rarest possible register. "A person who was also once a child who wouldn't eat," she says. He looks at her. "After my mother died," she says. "I was 9. My grandmother waited. She didn't fix me. She just waited and was present and trusted that I would come back." She pauses. "I came back. So will Seo-yeon." He does not speak for a long time. When he does, his voice is different, lower, stripped of the professional register. "I'm afraid," he says. "I have been afraid, every single day since August, that I'm going to lose her too. Not the same way, but lose her, to grief, to silence, to the version of herself that locks the door and faces the wall." He looks at the window. "I keep trying to fix it, because if I stop trying, it means I'm accepting that I can't." "You can't fix it," Chiamaka says. "I know. But you don't have to fix it. You just have to be there while she fixes herself." He turns to look at her, and she sees in his face for the first time the full weight of what he has been carrying. Not just the grief, not just the fear, but the specific isolation of a man who cannot afford to be broken because someone small is depending on him to be whole. "I don't know how to just be there," he says. "I know how to solve things." "Then this will be hard," she says honestly. "But you're already doing it. The garden, Sunday breakfast, those were just being there." He looks at her for a long moment. "You told me she hums," he says. "I do. She hums now. In her room sometimes. I heard her yesterday." Something moves across his face, something that is the opposite of grief, its exact counterpart, bright and aching in equal measure. "I haven't heard her hum since before." Chiamaka looks at her coffee. "She borrowed it from me," she says. "She'll make it her own." It does not happen the way she is careful to tell herself it shouldn't. He is staff, he is the owner of the household. She has terms she has set for herself, the same terms she sets in every placement, because she has seen what happens when those lines blur, and it's never clean and never good. She holds to the terms. She is professional, she maintains the appropriate distance in corridors and meetings and morning kitchens. But the mornings keep happening. He is there at 6 a.m. and she is there at 6 a.m. and they drink coffee, and sometimes they say very little, and sometimes they talk about Seo-yeon, and sometimes, rarely, carefully, they talk about other things, about her grandmother, about his wife, once briefly, the way he describes her as someone who made things grow, plants and children and silences alike, and then stopped mid-sentence and said, "I don't know why I'm telling you this." And she said, "Because it's 6 a.m. and nobody's watching." And he almost smiled. She does not let herself want anything she shouldn't. She is very disciplined about this. But she notices things she is not disciplined enough to stop noticing. The way he talks to Seo-yeon differently now. Not performing security, just being there, and how much easier it looks on him when he isn't trying. The way he has started coming to the garden on Sunday afternoons, the leaf and stone project ongoing, never finishing, always adding. The way he brought her tea once on a cold Thursday afternoon when she was working in the East Corridor, set it down beside her without saying anything, the temperature exactly right, and kept walking. He noticed the temperature. She is very careful about what she does with the noticing. Day 35. The child is perceptive in the way of children who have been forced to pay very close attention to the adults around them. They're in the sitting room, Chiamaka reading, Seo-yeon drawing. She has started drawing again. Mrs. Kim mentioned it with a careful neutrality that was actually profound relief. When Seo-yeon says, without looking up at her paper,
Let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching this video from. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and stay with us. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next video.
"My dad looks at you." Chiamaka turns the page. Lots of people look at each other. It's how we know the room isn't empty. "Not like that," Seo-yeon says. She is using a blue pencil. The drawing is of something Chiamaka can't yet identify. He looks at you like he's trying to figure something out. "Your father is a very thoughtful person. He was like that with Mama, Seo-yeon says. Very simply, not as a comparison, just as information. He used to watch her like she was doing something amazing even when she was just reading. Chiamaka does not say anything for a moment. Do you mind? She asks, carefully, when he looks at me. Seo-yeon considers this with the full seriousness of a child who has been asked for her actual opinion by an adult, which doesn't happen often enough. No, she says finally. Mama told me once that love isn't a container that gets empty when you use it. It's more like a fire. You can light other fires from it and it doesn't get smaller. She draws a careful line. I think she was trying to tell me something about after, in case there was an after. Chiamaka's throat tightens. She sounds very wise, she says. She was very direct, and she always told the truth, and she made you eat things even when you didn't want to. Seo-yeon looks up and meets Chiamaka's eyes with a small, precise, deliberate look. She would have liked you. Chiamaka presses her lips together for a moment. I would have liked her, she says. Seo-yeon goes back to her drawing. After a moment, you're staying, right? You're not going to leave like the others. Chiamaka looks at this child who is asking the most important question in the most casual possible voice. I'm staying, for as long as you need me. What if I need you for a very long time? That would be fine. Seo-yeon nods, satisfied, and adds something to her drawing. When she turns it around to show Chiamaka, it is 3 figures, small, medium, and large, standing in a garden, near a wall. The small one is holding a rabbit. The large one and medium one are standing close together, their shoulders touching. That's us, Seo-yeon says, in the garden on Sunday. Chiamaka looks at the drawing for a long time. It's very good, she says. Day 40, 6 a.m., kitchen. He is there before her for the first time, which means he came early, which means something. She pours her coffee. She sits at the counter. He is at the window with his own cup, looking out at the garden where the leaf and stone project is still accumulating slowly, the way important things do. I have a question, he says. All right. Is this going to be a problem? She knows what he means. She has known, with the specific clarity of someone who has been paying attention, that this moment was approaching. What is this? She asks. Not evasively, she wants to hear him name it. He turns from the window. He looks at her the way Seo-yeon described, the way you look at someone who is doing something you are trying to understand. Your opinion matters in meetings I navigate. I time my mornings around being in this kitchen at 6 a.m. I moved the call yesterday because you were in the garden and I wanted... He stops. I wanted to be in the same place you were. She looks at her coffee. I'm aware, he says, of what I am and what you are in this house, and I have no interest in making you uncomfortable or creating a situation that... Jaehan, she says. He stops. It is the first time she has used his name, just his name, without the formal address. It sits in the kitchen between them like something placed on a counter to be considered. I think about your opinion in the situations I navigate in this house. I time my evenings around knowing you're somewhere in the building. I know the sound of your footsteps in the corridor, and I know when you've been awake all night because your coffee consumption changes. She looks up at him. So no, it's not going to be a problem. I don't know how to do this. The last time, he stops. I'm not good at this. I know, she says. That's all right. Seo-yeon? Seo-yeon drew a picture of us in the garden. She told her mother said love doesn't empty like a container. A pause. She's given you your blessing already. She's just waiting for you to catch up. He looks at her for a long time. Something in his face, the immense, perpetual weight of the last 8 months, shifts. Not gone, just redistributed. Just shared. He crosses the kitchen slowly, the way you move when you aren't entirely sure you are allowed to be somewhere and have decided to go anyway. He stands very close, not touching, just close enough that she can feel the warmth of him. I don't know what to call this, he says. Start with breakfast, she says. You're very good at Sunday breakfast. He almost smiles. Then he does smile. And it is not the almost smile she has been cataloging for 40 days. It is a full, unguarded, slightly undone smile that transforms his face into something that is not the man the world knows, and is entirely him. Sunday breakfast, he says. Sunday breakfast, she agrees. 6 weeks later, the garden, Sunday afternoon. The Leaf and Stone project has, at some point in the last 2 weeks, resolved itself into a shape. Not a finished shape, never a finished shape, but something that has a center now, a direction. Seo-yeon is adding a red leaf to the outer edge. She has explained the system 3 times, and Chiamaka and Jaehan have both pretended to understand it on each occasion, which Seo-yeon is aware of, but tolerates because the pretending is affectionate. Jaehan is sitting on the bench. Chiamaka is beside him, close enough that their shoulders are touching. Not planned, just the natural result of a bench and an afternoon, and 2 people who have stopped managing the distance between them. Seo-yeon looks up from her project. She looks at them on the bench. She looks at Solmi. She looks back at her project. Solmi says you're allowed to hold hands, she says, very casually, adjusting a stone. A beat of silence. Does she? Chiamaka says. She said it's fine. She's been observing the situation and she thinks it's time. Jaehan looks at Chiamaka. Chiamaka looks at Jaehan. He turns his hand over on the bench between them, palm up. Not a demand, a possibility. She puts her hand in his. Seo-yeon nods once, satisfied, like a very small professional who has confirmed the hypothesis. Good, she says, and goes back to the project. In the winter garden, in the afternoon light that falls at the angle Chiamaka loves, the Leaf and Stone project grows by 1 more piece, and the 3 of them are in the same place at the same time, with nothing between them that needs managing, and it is exactly enough. She came to this household with a briefing file and the uniform and the specific knowledge of someone who had been the child in the chair. She did not fix Seo-yeon. She did not apply a technique or a method or any of the 17 approaches that had failed before her. She simply was present, in the corridor, on the floor, with her book and her toast and her grandmother's melody, and she trusted that the child would come to the warmth if the warmth was patient enough. She was right. And in being right about the child, she was also right about the father, that he did not need fixing either, that he needed someone to stand in the kitchen at 6 a.m. and tell him the truth, that he needed to stop performing wholeness for his daughter and just be broken beside her, that love is not a container that empties, and borrowed brave works if you remember to say thank you. The moment he froze in the hallway, 6 days after she arrived, coffee going cold in his hand, Singapore calling, the acquisition crumbling, was the moment he saw his daughter lean forward for the next bite, wanting the next thing before the current thing was finished, alive in the way that living required. He did not answer the call. He stood in the doorway and watched his daughter eat breakfast in the company of a woman who needed nothing from her. That is the whole beginning of the rest of it. One ordinary morning, one open door, one small girl leaning forward. Everything from there was just showing up. Stay dangerous. Stay loved.